So this year, our theme is spiritual activism. And so I invite you to be attentive more to how you're listening than the words. Because activism, if it triggers you and it takes you to a scenario about politics, that's about how you're hearing the word, not about what the word is about in this context. Okay? Spiritual activism is literally just that, activating our spirit and actually living in that activation, making it real, making it move. And so this month, up just a fuzz, I'm not sure what you're hearing in the headset, but in the room it's a little sparse. There we go. So this month, we've looked at compassion. We've looked at a different way to look at the word poor. And the talk title today is, Who Are the Poor? And so we're going to continue in this exploration of this concept of poverty. And we're going to look at it today from the paradigm of poor, rich. That quite possibly it's the same thing from a different seat in the stadium. That if we didn't have a concept of rich based on the absence of lack, we couldn't have the concept of poor as the absence of rich. That really what we've done is create this spectrum in our human experience to maybe, sorta, kinda, in some way justify our perception of lack and make it more comfortable. Just saying, it's possible that as human beings we may have done that. Is it Rumi who says, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation? So the minute we start talking about what we know internally, it's muddled. It just is. The clearest any of us are ever going to know divinity as us is in the silence. That's why Buddha sat under a tree in silence, because that's where we find it, in the silence. And if we research most religions, it goes back to that, in the silence, away from the language. Because language, words are just little labels of meanings. And they mean something different to everybody. It's just like that word activism. Just saying the word, there's a lot of different definitions of it operating in this room. If I were to put a phrase up and ask everybody to define it, just something totally benign, like a rolling stone gathers no moss, we would have at least 20 to 30 different definitions of what that phrase means. And so it's important to recognize that communication oftentimes is not. It just simply isn't. We think we're communicating because most of us operate under this belief that you hear it the way I'm saying it. That we're already, because we share planet Earth and we share this experience called humanity, that we just get one another. But we don't. Okay? I love what's happening in terms of gender identity these days. Because you used to be able to look at somebody and you just knew what their gender was. Good luck with that today. You don't know. You don't know. Truth is, we never knew, but we thought we did. And we just operate from that paradigm. We look at skin color and we assume that we know who somebody is. No, we don't. If you check our e-blast, Deborah is co-hosting a webinar on Wednesday night about the multiracial experience because it's very different. You know, it's always kind of astounded me more than just a little bit that when President Barack Obama was elected president, he was our first black president, because he's not. He's our first mixed race president. Why wasn't he our first half white president? Because he is. And it's that kind of thinking. It shows up the same way when we're dealing with the poor. I was actually in a group of ministers recently, and I heard one of them say, they just want to stay in their fear. And I thought, wow, how do you know that? How do you know that? And then I realized how easy it is to say those words. Well, that's their situation because that's what they want it to be. Is it? I don't know that unless I am bold enough to ask you. It's an assumption on my part. And it's assumption based on my comfort zone. See, we establish our comfort zone as the standard, and then everybody else is either above it or below it. Because I don't know about you, but it's an interesting thing about our little comfort zones. They're only big enough for us. Have you noticed that? And we talk about like-mindedness, but really, we'll let you kind of be like-minded, but I'm not going to let you into my comfort zone because it's mine. Hold that thought. Here's how the Science of Mind glossary defines poverty. An impoverished thought. Nothing to do with money. A belief in lack or limitation. Nothing to do with wealth. A lack of knowledge that substance and supply are spiritual. Stuck in condition. Nothing about money. A result of the inability, not unwillingness, inability to perceive that prosperity is ever present. A denial of good. Denial doesn't mean they don't want it. Denial, just take a little detour here, back into my treatment days when I was a registered addiction specialist. Denial is a normal, measurable, healthy human response to stress. It is not lying. That's different. Denial is that thing that happens that we're born with that protects us from emotional, mental overload. And then it meets out the experience as we're able to absorb it. When you see a tragedy, even though you know you're witnessing it, the first word in your awareness is no. That's denial. Healthy, normal, measurable, predictable human response to stress. Let's stop beating each other up for it, shall we? A limited sense of the universe. So if poverty is all that, it is simply an unawareness, is it not? It is simply an unknowingness. And how many of us, when we're in the throes of what we perceive as a negative condition, instantly know how to snap our fingers and get out of it? I don't. When I'm sitting with ice on my back because my piriformis is screaming louder than my brain cells, intellectually I know that my spiritual avenue is to claim without a shred of doubt that my body is operating in harmonious communion with itself and the universe, that every cell is aligned for my good, that I experience nothing but joy and wonder, and my rear end is screaming, "Are you nuts?" That's the dance. Because both are true. Both are true. Ernest Holmes talks, and this is like, this thing I'm doing with reading The Science of Mind in 1 year, and it is growing me in so many amazing ways. Honestly, I think they've rewritten the book since last time I read it, because there's a lot of stuff in here I never saw. And you know, it's all about me, so they went in and took my book and added stuff when I was not looking. It's probably not even in your book, but it's in mine. Disease is not always due to conscious thought. Now, did anybody else just go, what? That's a title right there. I'm not making it up. Diseases which are mental in their origin must arrive from some inner state of consciousness, meaning awareness in this context. While most disease must first have a subjective cause. Now, the fact that he uses most disease gives me pause. Is he saying there's some that don't have a subjective cause? I don't know, but I'm like, all right, now something else to explore. This subjective cause, 9 times out of 10, is not conscious in the thought of the person who suffers from it. How often do we, even if it's only internal, look down our spiritually arrogant noses at one another with that internal, well, what's in your consciousness that's creating that? We do it, and we need to not do it. Because in that aspect, there's nothing true in that statement. Because if we go to absolute consciousness, one cause, there's nothing in the absolute that will produce poverty or disease. Nothing. If we're looking at it from a consciousness of awareness at our level and how we're directing absolute consciousness, what's in your consciousness that created that? Well, nothing, because the problem is what's not in my awareness, not what is in my awareness. What's not yet in my awareness. And awareness is not intentional. I invite you to right now bring something to mind that you're aware of and stop being aware of it. Stop it. Just stop it. You can't. You can't. Awareness is missing. And so when we're practicing compassion, perhaps the place that we need to start is with our own misperception. To first heal what's operating in our judgment about somebody else. To recognize that judgment is that place where we're like, where's the triangle? You know, that villain, victim, hero triangle? I'm on it. And then we just start assassinating one another. How do you get off the triangle? You take yourself off because you put yourself on. See, but most of us are really busy on the triangle looking for a hero because we think the hero will get us off the triangle. The problem is the hero's part of the triangle. Won't work. If you're looking for a hero, you're still on the triangle. If you're the victim, before you became the victim, you made somebody the villain. If you're the villain, who did you victimize? The idea of the hero is just our way of ignoring that we have any responsibility to get off the triangle. But here's what I'll promise you. The moment, the instant, and I mean it is instantaneous, that you get off the triangle, the whole triangle goes away. The minute you step out of victimhood, there are no villains. It doesn't mean everybody suddenly behaves correctly. So let's not extrapolate that silliness, because we don't have the power to control how other people behave. But I do have the power to see the truth of you beyond your behavior. That I have the power to do. And I do it without ignoring your behavior. The bridge is I stop making you bad because you're unaware. I stop making you bad because you consciously choose to use the power that creation put in you to choose. See, we're all good with choice until somebody makes one we don't like. Notice that? I support choice, not that one. I'm pro-choice, not that one. Why do they need to choose that? Why do you care? Why do you care? And sometimes we have a viable, connected reason to care. Are you willing to ask? One of the things that Gary Simmons talks about in his book, The Eye of the Storm, is this idea of nonresistance. So, gosh, when was that? 2010, 11-ish. I quite unintentionally, from an awareness perspective and quite intentionally from an unawareness perspective, orchestrated my own termination from a job that paid me well, but that was literally killing me. And so I had a lot of free time. And in that free time, I decided to avail myself of having, put my body in the shop, get some new parts, had both knees replaced. So I had a lot of time to sit on my deck out in Rio Neto and stare at the spider webs in between the redwood boughs and just be amazed. And what kept coming up was practice non-resistance. I'm like, how hard can that be? Non-resistance. Just don't do it. Well, it's a lot harder than it sounds, because we are conditioned in this human realm to resist. Because our ego is all about self-protection. Self-protection requires me to resist anything I perceive as a threat. And anything that challenges my deeply held beliefs, that creates cognitive dissonance, is a threat. So what I got really clear about is that I walked around in a state of resistance to everything, to protect a part of me that can't even be harmed. That little part of me that informs me from that sensitive emotional place that has never been harmed, that can't be harmed, but that I believed was dead. And what I learned is that this is what resistance looks like, and this is what non-resistance looks like. I invite you to give it a try. Let's take this into prayer. Knowing that there is only one infinite, ever-present source, I know that I am in its presence, and that is all I am in. That this one is manifesting itself as its creation in brilliant multiplicity and diversity. I recognize that there is no threat to my soul. That I allow my ego to do its job to protect my flesh. And I allow my awareness to evolve, to understand there is nothing to resist at the spiritual level, at the mental level, at the level of mind. I was born in alignment. It is my right, it is my pleasure, it is my joy to choose to live in that alignment. Recognizing there is only one, I recognize that what I speak for myself, I speak for all of creation. That we are each fully infused with the magnificence and the brilliance of creation itself that can never destroy itself. That is the safety of our soul. We are held, created, sustained, cared for, loved, celebrated by that which created us. And so I claim and affirm now a realization, a making real of a society that looks at each expression of divinity with a heart of celebration, with a heart of inclusion, with a knowing that regardless of the wrapping paper, we are looking at ourselves and we claim one another as our own. And we give in that circulation just as the divine gives to us, unrestricted, unending, to lift one another up to our greatest expression of the truth of our being. And as I say these words and feel the truth of them throughout my being, I feel my vibration lifted to gratitude. So grateful to know this is how it works. To claim what is. And so in this gratitude, I release my word, knowing it is complete. I release it, I let it go, and I stand in the glory of its fulfillment. And I invite you, if you are ready to claim this as your own, to join me as we say together, and so it is.